Good afternoon to you all. So how is everyone doing? I hate being the guy between you and lunch, but there is one more gentleman who actually has to catch a flight. So we'll be on time. I promise we'll be on time in terms of the speech and the duration for the speech. My name is Shyam Sunder, and I come from an organization called Ramco Systems, which is based out of Chennai in India. And we are an ERP cloud software provider. And so when you say cloud software, the word cloud itself sort of arouses various kinds of memories in you, right? As a child, when you look up at the sky and you see the cloud, you see various forms in it. You see animals in it. You see various shapes in it. You imagine it to be something. Somebody writes poetry out of that. And then you also think of the cloud as something that hides something else, right? Your head is in the clouds. You're not able to think clearly. So there are various kinds of interpretations to the cloud. I'm even reminded of an old Mahendra Kapoor song. You know, it's about in the movie called Dhund. I'm sure you have heard about it. So it's not like, you know, you're coming out of one cloud into another. Cloud here, really, we are talking about the silver lining. How can you take something as complex as ERP software, something as expensive as ERP software, down into the MSME segment? A little while earlier, I was asked by one of our friends here, why is it that MSME is so important? You know, what is so great about it? Why are you guys interested? MSME has been, right from the beginning of this session today, it's been identified as one of the most important sections of our business society. It's also touted to be the biggest grower in the next 10 years or so. Let's not forget that large multinational organizations which exist in the world today have actually grown through acquisitions, right? Acquisitions of smaller, smarter organizations. They're, in a sense, a large community of MSMEs running different product lines and different services into the global market. I have had the privilege of speaking with larger multinational companies, and invariably the question which is asked is, why do you go around looking for acquisitions? And their answer is very simple. The biggest cost of doing business is actually acquiring a customer. Who is investing into acquiring customers today? It's the MSME. They are the ones who are actively doing it because they are the ones who are looking for business. So when you acquire an organization, you automatically acquire the customers also. Sometimes it is also the innovative product and technology that they carry. And at a more subtle level, MSMEs have what is known as growth-oriented cultures. Like, for example, a housewife here in India knows that when the curd culture is spoiled, using a better culture will improve the quality of the curd. Something like that. Find people who are productive. Find people who are hungry. Find people who can take your products to the market, change the organization's culture as much as you can, and benefit from that. So, when you start talking about the value of an MSME, I think it's apparent, isn't it? The other point is about Indians, right? There used to be these jokes way back in the 70s and 80s. So a South African is able to discover a mine, discover a diamond from a mine. An American may turn it into a tie-pin. It's the Indian who writes "Made in India" on top of it. So these are the kind of jokes that were floating around at that particular point in time. That's not really true anymore, is it? Because I think we have shown the world that we are capable of delivering innovative products and services, that we have got the tenacity to survive in the business and grow it. And India and China are touted to be the largest market today in the world and also the most growing countries in the world today. So how does such a transformation really happen? What are some of the challenges for the second generation entrepreneurs and the family businesses that we have? And what is it that they can do going forward with IT? How can IT really add value? So that's the perspective from which I'm here to speak about. And I hope you'll be able to benefit from this session to some extent. So very quickly about Ramco Systems, what we do is we deliver ERP software. Many of you would have heard about the Swiss brand of watches, right? ETA is the name of the company. They actually provide watch movements for brands such as Swatch, Longines, Rado, Omega. Some of you might be wearing one on your wrist. That particular that particular company's ERP is from Ramco. Okay. And Ramco Systems is a part of the Ramco group of companies, and we are an Indian-made ERP which is used internationally. Somebody was talking about the quality of products and acceptance internationally. It's improving, it's changing. They realize that Indians are not just bodies, but we are also product organizations that can deliver innovative products and services that help them actually nourish the business. So that is the perspective from which Ramco comes. Even if you take our cloud ERP today, Gartner mentions Ramco is one of the only company actually here in India which has a cloud-ready ERP. Apart from SFDC, SFDC is really an American company. So that way there is something that Ramco has today that we feel extremely proud of, which more than 300 customers here in India are using and are able to access over the cloud in an OpEx model. So that, and they come from a wide variety of industries. They come from manufacturing, they come from services, and they also come from retail, distribution, and other similar industries as well. So here, what exactly are entrepreneurs primarily concerned with today? What's there on top of their minds that they are worried about? The main concerns are the commodity prices. We know that commodity prices have hit the roof, and even though the government has initiated a number of steps to control commodity prices, it continues to be an ongoing challenge. And we know it's not we can sit here and talk about financial numbers, GDP, inflation, etc. That's not the real reason why that's happening, is it? It's the structural issues which actually fall into place, which is really causing this kind of inflation that is happening. So that is one particular part of it. The second part of it is, say, in terms of the actual inflation. There was a point in time when interest rates dropped because the economy was actually down below and had to be revived. The typical way to work an economy that's gone dull is to reduce interest rates so that borrowing increases and businesses start growing. But inflation is an issue. If inflation comes by and it's because of structural and not financial reasons, then monetary and fiscal policies don't help. You have to go with physical work mechanisms and productivity enablers to be able to fix that problem. So that's very important there. In terms of governance, governance is an issue. A little while earlier, Mr. Verma mentioned that the heterogeneity in the Indian industry is large. This is true. The MSME sector is not just one set of companies producing one set of products or whatever. It is very, very heterogeneous. And anybody who wants to serve this segment must be able to deal with heterogeneity in an economical manner. So when you talk about governance systems, etc., there has to be an enormous amount of focus. You may take that focus into these organizations through clusters, but ultimately if you want to touch each and every organization within those clusters, you have to ensure that you deal with the heterogeneity in the economic manner. So that's very, very important. Then, of course, the Web 2 technologies, social networking. Mr. Verma mentioned this in a very fleeting manner because he didn't have too much time to speak about it today. But the point is, social networking is the way of the future in terms of marketing. It's not the way of the future, it's already the way of doing things. People don't have time to sit down and listen to presentations such as this. If I get about 2 minutes of your attention during the half an hour that I speak, I think I'll be a lucky man, right? So that's the reason why tweets are becoming more popular than blogs. Or for that matter, anything that you put out as a message, you have to be very careful that you say the right thing so that it gets across to the audience and you're able to actually communicate what you want to say. And last but not the least is the increasing automation. A very important aspect. Technology has grown in leaps and bounds. It's for you to harness and really benefit from. And that's where these concerns actually come from. So having said that, these are the concerns that entrepreneurs actually have. What is it that they can do to actually adopt IT, right? What part of your capital expenditure can actually go towards your IT today? I don't think any part of it can, right? Because capital expenditure is required for marketing, capital expenditure is required for customer acquisition, capital expenditure is required for expanding into global markets. Somebody here mentioned that the SMB segment should reach out to the global market almost immediately. There was somebody from Georgia who mentioned that a little while ago in the previous session. So what we are actually saying out here is that the SMBs require to use their capital for very, very business-specific reasons, managing issues. They need to come together as communities and be able to collectively bargain for whatever they require as benefits and so on. So what part of this capital is actually going to be freed up for IT? I don't believe any part of it will, or it will be very difficult to do so, if at all. Everybody acknowledges the benefits of IT. We all know that IT works from two fundamental principles. One is that IT helps you process large volumes of information. The other thing that IT helps you do is network, that is share that information with various people. So there is obviously a benefit to be had from that. Once the benefit is, but to realize those benefits, are you going to go invest into a large ERP? I don't think so. It's going to be very difficult for you to do so because more often than not, ERP is actually disruptive technology. You enter a point A with ERP, you continue to transition through B, C, and D, and suddenly you find that ERP has crossed over to X. So you're not able to upgrade because of the costs and things of that nature. And you will find that the technology influxes continue to cause these kinds of problems, retraining problems. You can't have people working with you forever. They quit, they move, they change organizations, etc. Which means that whatever energies you put into ERP training in the beginning of your ERP implementation cycle are all lost. And you're not able to sustain that going into the future. Maintaining an IT application is not your core capability. Manufacturing is. If the MSME segment, which is contributing more than 40% of the export, as was noticed when observed by the Honorable Minister in the morning, then what happens is this 40% for it to grow to a much bigger number will simply mean that the business gets more attention than the IT systems do. So don't worry about your IT systems. Let somebody else do that for you. And that's where the cloud paradigm really comes from. The other aspect of the cloud paradigm is that the time criticality. Very, very important an umbrella concept in cloud computing. You are able to access those products and services on demand. When you need it, you have access to them. When you use them, you pay for it, right? When the vendor actually comes out and makes you a request to upgrade, etc., you're not concerned about the upgrade. The vendor manages the upgrade process on their own. And last but not the least, definitely whatever requirements you have in terms of scope expansion are addressed as and when you require it. This should be compared with the time-dependent IT activities of the past. If I had 12 to 18 months' time, I can implement your ERP. So compare the paradigms of the past versus the paradigms of the present. Right now, what we are saying is, we are saying that ERPs can be implemented to suit your convenience, and you can get into a OPEX payment model that actually helps you manage your expenses well. There is a lot to be said about Indian ingenuity, right? I remember very distinctly when I was a student in the US doing my MBA, I had a friend from the Middle East region. He saw me shredding carrots one day with a carrot shredder. Somebody else in the US would have made a vegetable shredding machine. I had this little shredder, and all I had to do was to rub the carrot on top of it and shred it. He was so fascinated by this product, how you could achieve the same thing with much lesser cost, maintenance, upgrades, etc. So that's what it is. Indian ingenuity is to be able to provide the quick fix. Business does not wait around for you to come out with a classical solution for IT problems. Businesses does not wait at all. They don't wait. Quick fixes are very, very important. You should be able to not only deliver the core functionality, but you should also be able to deliver the quick fixes so that the business appreciates what it is that you're doing. And that's why the time criticality aspect becomes even more important. So like this, I can go on listing reasons why IT is actually more affordable, more smart, etc. for the MSME segment in the current scenario. So when you talk about technology adoption, what are some of the typical challenges you're likely to face? A bizarre variety of challenges, right? Usually what happens is, first is you have a blizzard of technology. So many different technologies. What do I take and what do I not take? If you're a family business or a small business, one person within the organization has to take an interest in IT. The biggest IT organizations in the world today have happened because one family member chose to focus on that in a big way, right? And I can quote any number of examples of large IT organizations which have grown from a family business, which happened because one of the owners took an interest in it. You also have to have some degree of product development experience. This way what happens is you realize what it takes to take a fundamental IT piece from a vendor and grow it to what you want it to be so that it serves your business. CapEx options, complexity. Products are complex, no doubt. but find a cloud option that actually reduces complexity. What is the meaning of reduction of complexity? One is to try and see how many parts of the business that it will actually touch and try to go about it in phases in business criticality, being the main parameter. The other is in terms of taking pre-configured solutions so that you don't spend a lot of time configuring them and suiting it to work for your business. And then the chicken and egg situation and accountability in family business, very, very important. It is. I've heard this from multiple CEOs. You will find that they have a lack of people who will take up the accountability. More often than not, employees in a family business have a tendency to say, if you want us to do this, we will do it, otherwise we won't. But the employees have got a reason to say so, and the owner has a reason to feel bad about this. This is another challenge which typically happens. I don't know if an ERP solution can solve this problem, but it's more of a social thing. You need to be able to take a step into the light, work towards the goal, and ensure that you actually achieve the results that you are looking for. Okay, so these are some of the challenges which are there. Let me also quickly talk about some of the technologies which are available in cloud available today. In terms of multi-tenancy, what does this really mean? How does it impact the user? If I'm coming to you with a price like what Mr. Verma was indicating in the first session, 3,000, 4,000 rupees a month or whatever on a user basis, how does that kind of a price point happen when somebody else is paying lakhs and crores for ERP solutions? It's because of multi-tenant technologies. Multi-tenant technologies in business terms simply means economies of scale. I do a job once, it benefits hundreds of customers in a cluster. That's the way it actually works. So we have to identify points of commonality. Like, for example, one thing that you can relate to immediately is every year the Indian budget is announced. There is always some change in the tax structure, both in terms of direct as well as indirect taxes. So what happens is your ERP has to change to meet that particular requirement. Once the budget is announced, a vendor like Ramco will actually effect that change, and that change is made available to all the people who subscribe to that particular service. So that is the meaning of multi-tenant technologies, being able to take one single action to benefit multiple customers and go from there. In terms of web services, this is still a difficult concept for India because there is little in terms of standardization when it comes to interfaces between organizations, but it's still a developing concept. What web services does is it identifies services granularly. Take manufacturing some 30 years back. Manufacturing used to allocate overhead costs by the labor hours in those days. Then what happened was they realized that it is actually more sensible to allocate overheads by the value of the inventory, because the inherent truth is that more expensive equipment actually require more supervision. And as the automation also increased, it turned out that the labor needed was too little. So what we are really talking about is those kinds of lessons which manufacturing learned about 20 to 30 years ago can be utilized in software as well. If I can define the service that you consume very granularly, then the OPEX model becomes that much more easy to implement. So you may just take one service, procure to pay as a process, that is dealing with your vendors, order to cash as another process, which is dealing with your customers, accounting and so on, or manufacturing for that matter. And then you can actually benefit from paying for only those parts of the ERP that you actually use, and in terms of the volume of usage is where the billing actually happens. So that is what is really most important out here. The pricing model, which is the other point which is listed here. Okay. In terms of delivery complexity, here again, MSMEs have to exercise a lot of discretion when they actually get into the implementation process. Remember that what you get right off the shelf is what ERP carries as best business practices. That is, you can promise to your customers that a certain good or service will be available on a certain date if you had real-time information about the manufacturing status or the inventory status, to make it very direct. A finished good available for sale, yes or no, is a question that a salesman will always want to know so that he can commit a delivery date. Or you should be able to track what is happening in the field. You have shipped your products. Where are they today? Have they reached the customer? What is the bottleneck? Where is the delay? These are the kinds of things. Sometimes what happens is organizations ship a lot of their goods and inventory to the depots, Once it reaches a depot, they realize they have either overstocked it or understocked it, and then they have to move it back. These are the kinds of problems that you face. These are all the kinds of things that the ERP will help you track. Also, when there is a returned good or a service, somebody says that this particular goods are damaged and I'm not going to pay you for them, and they return it, you have to be able to trace what caused that damage. That's what is called as lot traceability. So here is a manufactured good that has been sold to the customer, which has been returned to you, and you want to know what is bad about it, and you track the defect to a inventory item that you actually bought from a vendor which was actually faulty. So you'll have to do a recall. So these are the kinds of best practices which are already available to you that you can subscribe to. So this will rise you to a fundamental level of IT capability, from where you can grow the solution to address the nuances of your business through processes as you grow. So that's where this is coming from. So when you say typical implementation, we talk about, say, a best practice as being the way to go. There are two wrong ways to go about IT. One is functional driven. That is to say that only one department will use IT. Bad scene. Because that is the only department which will know what is going on, and it will stay inside that department, and you're really creating a political island. The other is consensus. It's like the Indian electoral process, right? You bring everybody in the organization together and try to select a particular technology. That's it. You will be selecting it for the rest of your life. So involve the right kind of people in making the technology choices. Go for a lean best practices implementation when you begin with. Don't go for any business-driven implementation till you're sure what your business is in terms of repeatability. Only when you see repeatability do you take the ERP product to your business. Otherwise, you manage your internal operations through the best practices which are already available in your ERP. So incidentally, in terms of terminology, etc., a product which is you subscribe to through the cloud and typically sits at the best practices level is a public cloud. Something that you actually customize and take to your business going beyond the best practices is called a private cloud. And there are hybrid clouds also, incidentally, which use a combination of various capabilities. So public cloud computing essentially means experience consistency. Everybody gets the same application, and you go on the pay-per-use model, and that you have best practices. Then the ubiquitous connectivity is very important. You should be able to access the ERP through any pervasive device. It can be an iPad, it can be a mobile phone, etc. You should be able to access that. And then, of course, the technology concepts that we spoke about a little while ago. What are some of the developing considerations? The big difference between financiers and IT people is that financiers actually fill your pocket. IT people fill you with information to make the right decisions. This is the difference, essentially. But security considerations are very important. When you perform online banking transactions, you will find that banking transactions have to be secure. And they are secure only to a certain extent. There is no 100% security. This is true of IT also. Okay? So, security, for as long as the vendor can demonstrate is state of the art, you will be able to go with that particular vendor. Typically, like Ramco's data center is certified for SAS 70 Type 2. That's the state of the art in terms of security. So like this, what happens is every vendor comes up with whatever is available as the most recent document or certification on security and is able to provide the security services to you. So initially, there are lots of this. Once again, in family businesses and MSME, you have to remember, what portion of your wealth do you actually store in banks? Do you store your cash? Do you store your documents? Do you store your jewelry? Everybody has got a different style of doing this, right? Everything represents a different level of liquidity and a different level of, preciousness. To somebody, a family jewel is far more important than all the cash they have in hand. So, you have to take the priorities. Information and data is something similar to this. Some portion of your data is like cash, liquid information. Some portion of your data is actually like jewelry that you bring out on rare occasions for effect. So, you decide what part of your business data you will take into the cloud and manage from there. The other part of it is ensure that your business heads are involved so that they also participate in the business and it is not just an IT department initiative. In terms of availability, there are guarantees that the servers will be up and running 99% of the time, and any further increases you will always find are challenges. But 99.9 is good reliability. Complexity and customization. Once again, avoid customization to the extent possible and go with the product. unless the customization makes business sense. What I mean by business sense is, say an industry like airline where Ramco works into in a big way, you will find that customer loyalty is a very big problem. So they invested a lot into customer loyalty programs. There they invented processes which will help them retain customers. These processes will not come out of a standard ERP. If it came out of a standard ERP, then it's not going to retain customers. Right? Similarly for power industries, those who happen to be in power, keeping the plant up and running is important. So they'll have their own practices. These are all very unique practices which are there, which is what keeps your business ticking. And that is what I mean. That is where it's worth doing the customization, etc., so that you're able to do well in your business. Metering and chargeback is a slightly complex concept where you actually meter the usage. See, I don't know how many of you actually know this, but for the last 5-6 years it has been apparent that IT has assumed a structure which is very similar to power and utilities. Like the generator, transformer, all that you have heard of, IT is very similar to that. You subscribe on a per user, per month basis in this model. In the case of power generation, you subscribe on a per unit basis. Very similar. So that's what we mean on metering and chargeback. Being able to actually take the credit for what you did not use, and being able to actually take the credit for discounted hours, being able to do all these kinds of things in the pricing model when you buy into IT. Okay, so that is what is important. And then integration. You might be running other software applications. Naturally, this piece also has to be integrated with the rest of your software. Typical public cloud experiences, what do they look like? Users range from 10 to several hundreds. You may be a very small organization. You may start with some 4 users. A monthly subscription could be anywhere between 10 to 20,000 rupees. Then you grow from there. Typically, what are the functions they adopt? Centralized sales and distribution, material planning and accounting, going into production reporting, manufacturing requirement planning. Yes, there are organizations in auto component industries who do their MRP on the cloud ERP. Then payroll, and then finally do configuration which is sensitive to the lines of business. So you can go about it in phases. That is the time criticality aspect. As and when you require it, as and when the organization gets acclimated to the use of cloud computing, you can take it and adopt the technology further. But the defining condition is that it should be driven by a business requirement, and there should be one member in the organization who is senior enough, who is focused solely on IT, and who has the credibility to speak to the business. CIOs cannot focus on technology products. They have to focus on the business. Technology products are a second step to the business requirement. So that's about all from me, and I'll finish my session with that just now. And are we taking questions now, or any questions that you might have? I'll be happy to answer them. Yeah.
Supposing you already have your own CRM, and there are components from like your ERP that you want to integrate into your own software that you have, and you have your own like billing and CRM, but there are other so is that possible?
Yeah, you can integrate any system theoretically with any other system.
Right.
What are the inhibitors to integration? One is that you find that the data systems are totally dissimilar, in the sense that you have a set of data fields which some other solution does not have. You're not able to map it properly. That's one thing. Second thing is you are not able to decide on the business criticality of the interface. Typically, should I do it every day, the interface, or should it happen once in a month? That kind of periodicity you're not able to pin down. The third aspect is connectivity. Okay, how do I go about this interface? So your CRM is sitting inside your organization, your cloud ERP vendor is sitting elsewhere. How do I go about the process of connecting the two? Usually at this point in time, it can be accomplished through a web service, but web services are very expensive. Instead, what people are doing is FTP downloads. So FTP, file transfer, the good old file transfer of the 90s. It's still in vogue, very much in vogue. People download and transfer data and do it because it's still the cheapest way to do it. Okay, so the issue here is you have to look at the business problems that you're facing. What is the frequency of interface, whether data is sufficient, yes or no, and then how you're going to go about the process of interfacing before you actually accomplish that.
Okay, that's a lot of that went over my head, frankly. But supposing you have your application hosted on another cloud computing.
Yeah.
Supposing it's hosted the rack space or something like that. and you got your applications and various components, and I presume you sell component-wise also, right? So now in that, and leaving aside all FTP and everything, and in that, is it possible to integrate, supposing you're on a .NET environment, using SQL, that for example, so is it possible to integrate with your, with Ramco's ERP?
Yeah, it's possible.
It's possible.
It is the answer is possible. What we'll do is, I think we'll take your question offline. I'll come and answer it in detail.
Sure.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
It's very interesting to know that you've been working on the ERP, especially on the cloud. I think it's a great thing to really have for the SMEs. But one of the things that I am an IT consultant and I run a consulting firm. I work very closely with the SMEs, and one of the things that I'd like to really point out that SMEs normally are not fully the end product manufacturers. They are either tier 1 or tier 2 level manufacturers. That means they manufacture only the components. They don't manufacture the ultimate this thing. So the critical key to SME's automation is not just ERP. It's the integration of the ERP with the SCM. That is the supply chain management. What is Ramco doing on the supply chain management, especially the linkages to the supply chain management for the larger organization to whom these SMEs are supplying?
Yeah, see, I think that's a very good question there. You're right. Integration issues are the biggest issues in the IT.
It's not an integration issue here. It is the main survival, because the inventory has to be manufactured after they receive an order from the larger manufacturer. If there are 10,000 cars of Maruti that are planned, and they really give you an order of 5,000 pieces of an assembly unit to be made, you are not doing the planning. They are doing the planning. Then you have to really translate it into the business. And that's where the integration to the SCM becomes a very crucial issue in the SMEs. And if that's being addressed by Ramco, that would be great.
Yeah. See, I'll answer that question in this way. I would, when you talk about large OEMs giving orders to subcontracted orders to smaller organizations which are manufacturing components, most of these orders are actually planned. In the beginning of the year, they will tell them what is the rough plan that they actually look for in terms of the number of components to be supplied. The communication comes out as a plan. It doesn't come out as a transaction. The first point. Okay. The second part of it is status monitoring. This is a report which has to be delivered from time to time by the subcontractor to the OEM, telling them that this is the kind of progress that has been made since the time that you have given us the order. This is the status, and this is where the goods are likely to reach you. So when you actually use ERP systems for these kinds of communications, you should be able to fundamentally track the order, you should be able to track the production status, and you should be able to communicate the production status back to the OEM so that everybody is in loop. This is usually how it is used. When you talk about business criticality, I appreciate that it is a business critical thing, but it is also low in terms of volume. It is not a transaction that you're doing when you actually pick up an order from an OEM, manufacturer, and then take it back to them in the form of a finished good. Transactions support this process of communication, which is what is sitting inside the ERP. I hope it's answering your question. I'm sorry? There is no doubt that there has to be some kind of a continuous communication between the larger OEM and the subcontractor. I'm not denying that. If you look at the manufacturing picture, there is a plan, do, check and act, the typical manufacturing cycle, PDCA cycle as they call it. ERP's emphasis is on transactions. It is not on the planning part of it, which is a one-time exercise or a revision exercise which keeps having. For example, what the ERP does, I can tell you, there is what is called as the concept of the MRP and the net change MRP. What MRP does is, it will tell you what your manufacturing requirements are in terms of items. Net change MRP is when the OEM communicates a change in the order level. They come and say that this kind of requirement has changed, and therefore you need to plan better for the changed requirement. The communication process is constant, and I don't deny it. But ERP is not meant for this kind of, the emphasis is on transactions and transaction processing. The one that you're talking about is e-business, which is communicating between the OEM and the subcontracting entity. And that part of it is usually a web interface. An interface which takes information from the subcontractor to the OEM and takes information from the OEM back into the subcontractor. Okay, fine, thanks. So I guess the gentleman has to start and he has a flight to catch, so I'll end my session. Thank you.